Hey everyone, it's Vanessa Callahan, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Calm, Empowered Parent podcast. Together, let's challenge the idea that parenting has to be perfect. We know that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to raising children, and while love is the key, it sure helps to have the right tools for the job. Raising resilient humans is intensely personal and even transformative work, and I'm here for it. Let's laugh, cry, heal, and learn together. Here we go. Welcome. It is such a pleasure to have Tony and Siobhan, my esteemed clients here, big-hearted parents, locals to the Bay as well in San Francisco. And we're getting together here in San Francisco to chat a bit about what it's like to raise kids in these times and what it's like to really consider what we want to do that's similar to how we were raised and what we would like to maybe improve upon, leave behind. And one way we like to think of it is like we're disrupting generational patterns to recreate them and create our own. And so, but we're going to take you back to a time when we were all just getting to know each other. So I came in and gave a school workshop, and I know we kind of made eyes in the room and started having really great conversations after the Zoom call. And what I noticed about both of these parents right away is their commitment to being the best parents they can be, but also being realistic about that it takes time and that even having support in your world could be helpful. So hats off to these two for stepping into mentorship. And we've been in a mentor-mentee relationship for about 1.5 years now. And so we want to rewind to a tough parenting time. And this is for folks to be able to get a sense of like what you two were maybe experiencing when you were, coming to that workshop, in that time of parenting. So maybe walk us through a little bit of like what it looked like, what it felt like, maybe paint a picture of, what you're experiencing. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So the big thing we were dealing with during when we first started interacting with you was there were a lot of things we were dealing, but the one that we were like, we could really use some help with is sleep time, like a sleep routine, getting Castiel to sleep at a reasonable time in a reasonable amount of time. And the routine used to be like it was the routine was
Big air quotes.
where I would take him back to the bed about 7, and then about 9:30 or so of him and I, his eyes would start to flutter. And if I missed it, like there was like this small window of time where he would finally fall asleep. Or like, mommy, I want mommy. So mommy would have to come. And now both of us are in the bed, kind of trapped, trying to put this kid to sleep.
Wait, so if I'm doing the math right, like 2 hours plus.
Oh, 2 to 3 hours every single solitary night.
Wow. Requiring both of us most of the time.
Wow. Yes.
And I think that started right when he was about 18 months old. Before that, he was more like on a toddler type schedule where he'd just fall asleep whenever and he'd have a nap time and then he'd sleep in the afternoon.
And how old was he at this time?
Say 3.
So I was a 3-year-old.
Yeah, 3-year-old. Yeah.
So your 3-year-old was sort of the boss of the night.
Oh,
every night.
I mean, really boss of everything, but the night was the most painful.
Yeah.
Because of how much time it would take. And both him and I are very, very sensitive to any sleep loss.
Oh, right. So it would really affect his mood and the next day. So it's kind of a vicious cycle you were stuck in.
Exactly.
And then you came to the session, we had our consult, and then, let folks know what happened next. This would be interesting.
So we had the consult and it was, I think maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It wasn't anything substantial. And we had shared with you and you gave us the option of social stories, which we'd never even heard of. Seemed like, okay, that's going to make a difference. Sure. We'll try it.
And social stories, for those of you who aren't familiar, is when you basically put the child into the story and you walk them through, and you can even, if you want, make like a picture book of like, this is the first step of the routine, the next step, and then this happens, and they can see themselves in it. And that can be a really useful tool in certain cases. But so you were skeptical, understandably, because you're like, we've done so many things, Vanessa. How is this one thing going to help, right?
So we took him the very next night through the routine that we would like to have. And we set him up like you had suggested. Hey, we're going to do the bedtime routine. We're going to take pictures so we can remember all of the steps. Okay. And it was just Daddy and Castiel, and Mommy was able to work during this time, which was So important. Because I think we were coming out of pandemic.
Summer,
So
yeah,
still
summer.
very
Yeah.
much working from home kind of an
Yeah.
environment, 1 bedroom San Francisco apartment.
Yeah, yeah.
With the 3-year-old who doesn't want to go to sleep. So they took the pictures. We got into bed. I think he was asleep, what, like an hour?
No, it wasn't even that. He was asleep almost like
It was very
I think
quick.
it was like 15 minutes total. The first, even from the very first night we did the thing, and he was asleep within 15 minutes. We never even printed the photos or
Yeah.
made a book out of it. It was just the
We just that
process,
one time.
the process of taking the photos with him and like essentially walking him through here's what we expect for sleepy time. And I think from that point forward, outside of days when he's been sick, that routine has like we've never had to
It's been
adjust
gold.
it. It's been from well, he's 5 now. So he was 3 and he's 5 now. And like the nighttime routine is like, okay, time to go to bed. He goes, okay, he closes his computer and he walks into the bedroom and he gets into bed. And about 5 minutes later, we do our prayers. 5 minutes later, he's asleep.
Amazing.
And that's it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And the times that we have had some hiccups, the Halto reminder, hungry, angry,
Lonely.
lonely, tired. So
And O was put on by
yes,
Sarah, who's in she and her son are in Mexico, and they said, well, what about Halto? O for overwhelmed. A little Spanish version. Yeah.
so we even discovered part of the struggle was that he was delayed in his expressive language.
Yeah.
So there were times we didn't realize he was hungry. And even to this day, I think it was Wednesday this week.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm still hungry. And we had given him a full dinner and a whole thing, but okay, he's going through a growth spurt.
Yeah.
And we just didn't know that because he couldn't communicate it in such a way. But once we got the Halto as like, okay, is he hungry? Nope. Is he angry? Nope. Oh, he's lonely. Okay, he wants mommy and daddy. Okay, let's cuddle. So for the times when it did hiccup, we had resources. It was magic.
Well, I think so. So sometimes what we can do is we can underestimate the power of certain strategies and tools
Yeah.
that really match the developmental needs of the kids at that time.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you know, probably had explained it to him, but actually walking him through was really helpful for a 3-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And then now having an acronym that helps you to like bring to mind that check-in
Yeah.
around, are you resourced? Do you need something here? Is there an underlying need?
Yeah.
Also, I have to say that from being a preschool teacher and an elementary teacher, right, for 15 years and then a step parent, in the moment, it's really nice to have something that's kind of snappy, like you can kind of pull, like just pull it, right? You're like, okay, let's do a walkthrough. And we could talk about rehearsing a routine, previewing a routine.
Yep.
Or Halto, an acronym. Oh, right, let's run through these 5. And it just kind of helps us shift into more of a problem solving space with the kids. And then if they know the tool too, sometimes they tell us.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing that one of my clients was sharing recently, another member of the immersion. They're like, my kid says, halt, halt, you know, and then they go, oh, right, let's check in. How are you doing, right? Before we like start the next thing.
Yeah.
So how lovely. Yeah. What a change.
Another quick example. The other day, Cass, he had been to the park. I took him to the park right after school. And so he had a full day of school, went to the park. And when we were done, he just dropped to the ground and he was like, I'm not moving. And I was like, okay, you know, like that's something. I'm not moving, okay. So I was like, do you want me to pick you up? No, and he just crossed his arms. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's tired. Like this is clearly tired. So I just picked him up. I held him. I put him in the car. And he was asleep in the car within like 2 minutes of out. Like
called it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, he was tired. I could just see it on his face. I knew exactly. I know the look. I know the expression. Homie is tired.
Yeah.
Let's put him to bed. Let's just get him where he can relax. And he just passed right out.
And like before you had, access to some of these tools, like through the mentorship, through the program, and before you had like the community, I know that sometimes you felt pretty alone with some of these things, especially because your desired like parenting style, how you wanted to raise him was going to look different from your family of origin to some degree, or maybe to a great degree.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you to start engaging in mentorship and having a community? I'd love to hear like, kind of like what made the difference for you when you had those?
I think it was a couple of different factors. One of them for me in particular was that I came from an upbringing that was very rigid and very disciplined.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of good, you're being a good girl, you're being a bad girl. There were times when my parents decided, rather than dealing with me and my brother fighting, I'm the eldest, so I'm going to get spanked. So those types of
Oh,
things were
yeah.
just really upsetting and unfair. And I always had big emotions, and my family, particularly my dad, had a really hard time with big emotions. And one of the classic things that he would say, it's sort of his signature, is if you want something to cry about, I'll give it to you. Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's
Mhm.
also inside of that domain, there's that whole conversation that we're starting to recognize as survival bias, where, well, I was spanked and look at how good I turned out. But at the same time, looking at the current research, no, actually, spanking damages the relationship. And if you
Yeah.
think about it from a logical perspective, and it took maturing for myself to be able to separate, like, let me hit you to demonstrate that it's not okay to hit.
Yeah, it's a mixed message
Yeah.
at best.
Yeah.
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 Right? It's not like utterly confusing, especially to a young person who's trying to figure out, how does power work? How does attention work? How does the world work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a
So,
firm,
and you
I'm a
went through that.
firm believer that most people do the best that they can with
Mhm.
the circumstances and situations,
Absolutely.
resources they have.
Right.
So I am very effusive about, my parents did their job very well,
Yeah.
very well. They stopped so much of the cycle with me and my brother.
Yeah.
And I am clear how much they worked for that.
Yeah.
Never once did I ever question whether I was loved.
Mm.
And I'm committed that my son has that same experience,
Yeah.
that we are in his corner, even when he screws up.
Yeah.
And being in his corner in this day and age, knowing that hitting harms, regardless of for why. There was a period of time that it was like, no, there's appropriate times to hit.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Mm.
There really isn't. Other than defending yourself and keeping yourself safe, there is no reason to hit.
Yeah. And I think often we reach for things like hitting, if it's, especially if it's in our upbringing, right? We've been exposed to this association of
Yeah.
like, but really what I've been hearing time and time again from parents who either have the urge to hit or have hit and regret it or wish that they didn't need to hit, it's usually just you've run out of ideas.
Yeah.
And so like one thing, like you've already modeled here, even in this interview, is having another idea, like, oh, a halto check-in, like you
Yeah.
could have threatened him, if you don't get up, XYZ is going to happen in that sidewalk, in that laying
Yep.
on the ground moment. But instead you had maybe you had a thought of like, oh, right, all behavior is communication.
Yes.
That is what Vanessa told me or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like, you
no,
know, it's
completely.
like, what is he actually showing me with a halto? And then you have something else, like another place to go. And another way to interpret what's happening. Because showing love is the foundation of the relationship you have with your parents
Yeah.
and that you want to have with Cass, but how you show your love, how you
Yes.
demonstrate, how you show up for them
Yeah.
is what's changing.
Yeah.
And that's the pattern we're disrupting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the other
Yeah.
factor too is all three of us, our primary love language is touch. So
Mhm.
with that being the case,
Yeah.
hitting is even more impactful.
Right.
And that's something I could recognize from a difference between me and my brother. Because for my brother, it just doesn't register for him like that.
Yeah. So it didn't impact him the same way,
Not
but
at
maybe
all.
like words would if words were his thing, right? Yeah. Or like gifts, like, oh, you don't get a Christmas gift. Could be like, oh, right, for
Yeah.
people who have
If
gifts of a love language.
if I'm
So-
right, I think his is acts of service, which for me is like,
okay. Like, I'm not driving you anymore. You have to walk. It'd be like, you know, like you could
Yeah.
really cut deep with people. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother topic that we've talked
Of
about in the
course.
program too, love
Yeah.
languages. We should do a whole episode just on love languages and kids
Sure.
and like do's and don'ts around certain
Oh,
love
yeah.
languages, because there's a lot there. But I guess I'm curious, like, what do you feel like Cass gets to have on the other side of you having leaned into new tools and strategies? And what has it meant for you to be in a community too while you're, you know, go on this journey? That's a two-part question, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts. And maybe we hear from Tony next.
You know, one of the things that I ask Cass all the time, I ask him, do you know how much I love you?
Yeah.
Or do you know how much you're loved? And he goes, yes. I'm like, okay, good. And I tell him, it's important to me that you know that you're loved. I know, Papa, thank you. And that's, you know, that so he tells me that I ask him that constantly.
That's beautiful.
And then there are times where I'm like, I love you, buddy, and I give him the little sign for I love you,
Yeah.
and he'll just kind of look at me, and goes,
Confirmed, received, thumbs up, yeah.
Good, Baba, thanks. You know, but I think that like a big thing, he gets to feel like he's part of the family. You know,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
I know like for me growing up, like we as kids were kind of separate from the adults, right? We were like whenever we went to a gathering, all the adults went into a different room and all the kids were expected to stay out, right? You're over there until it's time to leave, kind of thing. And then like my dad and my mom did things on their own. They never like not never, but they did things on their own where we weren't included. For us, we give Cass the option. I'm like, hey man, I'm going to the store. Do you want to come with me? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Or when we go somewhere, like we ask them, like, hey, do you want to go there? Do you want to do something? Like we like include him in the decision making so he gets to feel like he's part of the family.
Yeah. And I see, like, I hear that as empowering his voice and reflecting back to him that his thoughts, his contributions have value.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that also like elevates kids to have more dignity, and like a more, valued and cherished role in the family. That's wonderful. I still remember when I graduated from the kids table to the adult table. It
Yes.
only took like 25 years or something. In my stepfather's family. And it was my cousin and I, same age, and we felt we were pretty puffed up when we finally made it to the adult table. And because it matters,
Yeah,
like you
100%.
do feel like you have more value.
And and my upbringing was vastly different than Siobhan's. I grew up in a lot of trauma and like a traumatic environment. And so for me, it was always like part of what's important here is that Cass knows he's respected, that he knows he's an equal, he's my equal, he's my son. And like obviously there's things he doesn't know and doesn't understand, but like I value his opinion, I value his judgment, and I value his like if he asks for something, or if I tell him, hey, by the way, today after school I'm taking you to the park, I'm taking him to the park after school, like, and if he says,
like
oh,
you're reliable, you'll
yeah,
follow through. Yeah.
And I also want him to know that his preferences are respected. So if he says, hey Papa, I want this, I don't want that, okay. Or whatever, like whatever thing we can, if I can't do that, I'm like, you know what, I can't do that, but we can do X, so it's like there is like negotiation available going both ways because he is part of the family. He's 5. He doesn't talk that well. Like he doesn't talk as well as me or whatever, but you know what I mean, but like he gets his point across. And I respect that, and I honor him as a member of the family, and I honor him as a member of like the household, and his contribution is just as valid as my contribution and Saban's contribution, and that's important to me that we operate that way with him.
And a lot of times when we don't give that to kids, they'll find another way to get more power and another way to get more attention, whether they're doing it consciously or not. Yeah. So like one of the antidotes to attention-seeking behavior is setting aside time to give them your undivided attention, things like special time, one-on-one time, but even involve, like sometimes the message is just involve me. I'm over here, you're trying to silo me into the playroom or something, right? Or into the kids stuff, and I just involve me. And I know we were recently at a client appreciation event. I took some folks to Point Reyes Station. We did some yoga. We had a beautiful hike, and we did some coaching. And there's just one moment where a parent was like, "My child just incessantly wants my attention." And I think I came up with this metaphor of like, "Well, have him hold the potato." I think that kind of became a thing in our coaching world just that day, that moment. Because, having a child be in the kitchen with you, and even if all you do is you have them come to the fridge with you and hand the potato to them for them to hold it, you're still involving, in this case, like a 4 or 5-year-old meaningfully. And that's a beautiful thing that you have committed to. Part of the family, cook with me, shop with me, make decisions together.
Yeah. You often hear in the house, you'll hear Cass going, I help. Like, yeah, come on help. You're going to help me. Like he wants to be part of it. And like everything takes longer, obviously, like it does, because it's like, oh, God, I want to get this done, but sure, yeah, come on, buddy, let's go. And like he helped me make the bed yesterday, right? I had never stopped to teach him how to get the corners on the thing down, right?
Yeah, on the sheet,
right? So how to get it around the fitted sheet. So yesterday I had a few moments. I was like, hey, let me show you how to do this. So he helped me make the bed. But I showed him, like, so now he has an extra step. So now when we do the bed again the next time, he'll be responsible for the corners. That's his job, right? That's you.
Right.
And he like wears that with like, he's like, yeah, yeah. And like, he takes it very seriously.
Ooh.
He works, he's like, you can see him concentrating on like his part of whatever he's doing. And then he just looks and is like, yeah, dude, perfect, good job. He goes, okay. Or I'll be like, okay, let me show you. And I'll take his hand and do a hand over hand with him. And then he goes, okay, I got it.
It's really cute when he does that now.
He's like, I'm reaching mastery. You can give me some space now. Do myself. And so I'm curious, like through this journey, being in a program, working with a mentor, having coaches, having a cohort, it's been great. I know you've said many times that the community really matters. So you're
Huge.
able to come up in front of folks and like share your story and hear theirs
Yeah.
and learn from them. I guess like what are some of the most important takeaways or learnings that you've pulled from the experience of being in a community learning together? Because I know they're rare out there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the one-off PTA meeting or the one-off workshop, but this is different. We're meeting twice a month. We're
Yes.
really connected in with each other, even becoming Uncle Tony and Auntie Siobhan
Yeah.
to some of the kids and
Yeah.
of the other members. So tell me a little more, like, what do you think you've gotten out of it?
One of the things I think is huge is normalizing the struggle and
Yeah,
normalizing dealing with stuff. But there's a lot of that happening in our culture right now anyway.
that's true.
The difference,
Thankfully.
right?
Mhm.
Its time has come.
Yes.
One of the major differences, and I'm just getting goosebumps, is that both of our different ways of parenting is valuable. And what probably would have already been the case, somewhat because I'm a little bit older than Tony, also because I have a stronger personality and I'm more like demanding, like, no, it must be this way. And that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
So the mental models that I have for parenting and what a good parent looks like involve such things like spare the rod, spoil the child.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually believe that for a good period of time.
Yeah.
But there's, like you had pointed to, other options. And being in the community lets me see those other options as valid. So that's great for my own experience as a parent. But what's really an unexpected benefit is being able to honor his way. Because before we started working with you, there would be times when Tony would do this kind of skill training with Cass, and I'm like, no, not yet. I'm not ready for him to be able to open the apartment door. If he can do that, we can't keep him safe. But I would get mad and be like, my parents did a good job parenting, so we should follow my examples, not yours. I know better than you because my parents taught me better than your parents taught you, which is complete crap.
Well, it puts you into conflict.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the other
Yeah.
part too is like, as I was raised, that children are to be seen and not heard. There was a period of time where I was trying to like corral Castiel's emotions, not because the emotions were bad, because I'm big emotions too. And I know what it's like to try to like my emotions.
Yeah, suppress them. Yeah.
But being able to see, oh, if I allow him to have those emotions, allow him to be a kid, like we had planned on any time we would travel with Castiel, giving people around us those little care packages of, sorry, my kid's going to bother you.
Oh,
As opposed to, no, this children are a part of our community. And that's the reality of flying.
and here's something that kids do.
Yeah, like kids are loud.
Like, I mean, they need to move, and we're going to be up and down the aisle many times, not once. Right? Yeah.
Like at one point, my mom said, why is our lives being dictated by a 5-year-old? And I didn't have an answer for that in the moment. And if I didn't have this community, what would likely happen is be like, she's my mom. She's been here. She's raised me really well. She's probably right.
You know, all the self-doubt that would come
Yeah.
up around whether you're doing it right or if you should be doing it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none of it is in any way a reflection on whether my mom was or is doing it right or wrong.
No.
Just like my own confidence from my own expression of being a mother. There's lots of expressions out there. I am not your prototypical mother. I don't like getting down and playing with imaginative things that I don't know what he's imagining. I can't play. I don't know. I need rules and structure and like, give me a board game. He's not old enough for that, right?
Right. You're in that transition. He's still in his fantasy world sometimes, and it's hard to relate. Yeah. But I would hear like this permission to have your own like kind of solid like perspective on what you would look like as a parent and how you want to show up as a parent, and allowing that to be like steady in the face of possible criticism or, you know, and always updating it, always evolving,
Yeah.
being willing to learn and grow, but having this like kind of inner strength and clarity
Yeah.
is huge. And you know who can feel that the most?
Yes.
Cass, your son.
And he can, he very much can.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, covered.
I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing about the community was being a part of the coaching perspective, like the part of the cohort, and being having you as a coach. Is Cass is always changing. He's evolving constantly, right? And so what worked 2 weeks ago isn't going to work now, right? But the fact is that like we have just enough checkpoints that as things change, we always have something new to bring to the conversation. Or somebody's going through it, we're like, oh, we should make a mental note. That's
Yes.
we're coming up on that kind of thing, right?
We literally did that on the last call. Like, we need to put this in existence somewhere. We're not gonna deal with it for another couple of years, but
So, like,
this is gold.
This,
Yeah.
we need to write this down somewhere.
See if we can get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for me, like a personal thing for me is the idea of not inheriting parenting, but creating parenting,
Yes.
Love
right?
that. Yeah. For those of you who
Uh,
can't see me, I'm snapping.
Right.
I'm like, yeah. because-
Like it's important to me that like I get to create what kind of parent I am and what I do, and how I react to certain situations versus kind of the inherited like whatever
Yeah.
you know. I'm speaking for myself. Like there's an intentionality for when I'm with everything I do with him.
Yeah.
Like it's all designed inside of either furthering our relationship, their relationship, or furthering his skills, or furthering something for him. Something is being furthered in one way or another. Like in the car yesterday, we were driving, and he wanted to go in the right lane. I was like, oh, you want to go in the right lane, not the middle lane that we're in right now. You want to move the car to the right lane. Yeah, Papa, the right lane. I'm like, okay, let's move to the right, like things like that, right? Like there's like
Yeah. There's an actual conversation
yeah,
happening and a
yeah,
connection.
but like
right?
there is like an intentionality to like I'm specifically repeating, oh, the right lane, that lane over there is the right lane, not the one we're in now, which is the middle lane. Like so
Yeah,
like
like you're teaching
yeah,
them,
Yeah.
right?
so
Yeah.
he's like so like trying to talk to him in a way that like both he's getting his needs met, he's getting what he wants, and I get to like teach him.
Yeah.
Right. And it's simple things like right, left, middle, that kind of thing.
And you have to be out of the power struggles
to be able to do
and
that.
out of self-judgment and self-doubt, like all
Yep.
those things to be able
Yep.
to do that. I guess if you could, I like asking all of my clients I bring on this question. So if you could go back and knowing what you know now, having stepped through, the tools, the strategies, seeing all these community examples, if you could go back and whisper yourself to yourself in the ear, like think of one of those harder nights where Cass is just not falling asleep and now Siobhan has to come in and you're both laying with him. You're both like, what did we do to our lives? That moment of like,
Yeah.
this is not sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So it's, where you start to feel the struggle. Like, what would you say to yourself a year and a half ago? Like if you could whisper in your ear.
Help is coming.
Ooh, that's
Help
a
is
good one.
coming. Because this is where the emotion will probably bubble through. I had really, really severe postpartum depression and anxiety. And he has struggled with his sleep always. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is just like every other child. And I was like, no, I've seen other children. I'm pretty sure it's not like this. And I was the one that was at home for a good, like, I don't know what, 6 weeks by myself, just him and I. Well, you were back to work and trying to figure out, oh, how do you be a parent and work? And it was just brutal. And the impact it had on me and then my family so far away. So knowing that there would be a community, and maybe that community is not here right now, but help's coming. It's gonna be okay. You're not in this on your own.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, how reassuring.
Yeah.
How about for you, Tony? What would you
I
say to
think mine's
yourself?
gonna sound more kind of jerkish.
That's okay. Go for
No,
it.
but like there were times where I, like the doubt was like, dude, did we make a mistake? Like, holy smokes, I think we made a mistake.
Like we weren't ready for this, or
Or I
can't
don't know.
handle
Like I
this,
don't know if
or-
I can handle this. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm like cut out for this. Because I've always maintained, like, I never wanted kids.
Mm,
Until I met Siobhan, I never wanted kids.
mhm.
And so, because I always thought to myself, like, I'm way too selfish to be a parent.
Well, it's not everything you went through.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm
Okay.
just like,
Yeah.
I just want my, like, I don't want to be needed by anybody. I don't want, like, that, like,
Yeah.
just those kinds of, that, the idea of that, it's like, no, thank you. And so there were times where it's like, Cass was like, he's awesome. I don't know, he's great. And then there were times it's like, oh my God.
This is what I was worried about.
Yeah, and it's like, I was like, so I would say, dude, you made the right decision.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
such
like
a phenomenal
confirmation.
father.
Oh,
So-
it shines through. Everyone listening can tell you've got such, your heart is all the way in.
Yeah.
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 And it seemed like needing to turn a corner around that though. Like the love was always there, but the mental game of the doubt and the wondering if you had made a mistake.
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
because it's like, there was a point in time where I was afraid that I was going to turn into what I didn't want as a parent, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's why it's always been so important to me to create being a parent.
And not just to kind of default to things
yeah,
that you
like,
don't want to repeat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was important to me that, like, Cass never questioned whether he was wanted and or loved.
Yeah.
Right.
That was important,
Yeah.
And so I make sure he knows Papa loves you. I know I told you like 50,000 times today. I don't care. Papa loves you. Like,
so he can continue to
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
confirmed. And even in the middle of disciplining, especially in the middle of disciplining, letting kids know that you love them
Yeah.
and doing it in the most loving way possible while still following through on what you know they need from you.
yeah, exactly.
It's like such a balance to strike, and it's not easy to do. I remember struggling with that, on and off for years when I was first teaching.
Yeah.
I would go home and have similar thoughts of like, what did I do? I left Cal Berkeley. I left chemical engineering
Yeah.
to like be a preschool teacher in
Yeah.
Montessori because it's like where I thought my heart was in it, but then like, am I cut out for it?
Yeah.
Or did I just ruin my life
Right.
and make a huge mistake?
Yeah.
But then I did what you all do too, get up in the morning and try again and go find resources. So
Yep. Yep.
I had mentors, I had teachers I would follow around and literally just like listen to
Listen.
what they would say. And I know we do this a lot in coaching, right? Like where I'll say like, here's some things you can try next.
Yeah.
I've had people say, and I don't know that I love this, but it's kind of, I understand because I did it too. They're like, sometimes I just find my Vanessa voice. And I'm like, no, it needs to be your
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
But they're like, no, so I can like hear the words and then make them my own. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not here to tell you how to do it, but
Yeah. Well,
it's helpful though to have models and
Exactly.
examples. Like it's how we learn best,
Yeah.
most of us,
Yeah.
actually.
well, and one of the things that's really powerful, because I already, before we had met you, had been watching Dr. Becky and Brene Brown and various other people who talk about rearing children,
Oh, they're great research
They're
and great
incredible
advice.
resources.
Yeah, I love them too.
but they're all like conceptual and instructional as opposed to like experiential, where I actually get to see you coach somebody else.
Mhm.
And in you coaching somebody else, it's not as threatening because I'm not the one like under the microscope.
Yeah.
And when I'm failing as a parent, I'm putting myself under the microscope.
Yeah.
So being able to detach a little and witness the coaching and then be like, okay, how do you think we could apply this? There's got to be a way that we can use this.
Yeah.
Like yesterday or whatever, Wednesday with the red, yellow, green, the scaffolding. How can we scaffold? What was it?
Cleaning up our
No,
food.
you're
Oh,
us.
eating lunch.
Eating lunch, yeah.
So it's just like the tools, we're using them for us just as much as being parents and just even being an adult and being a successful adult.
Yeah.
And some of that is just because I can hear it when you're dealing with someone else and it's not as, "Oh,
Right.
how often do I look? I'm such
I
a
know,
parent,"
oh, no.
like the mom guilt, right? Just short changes any opportunity and then we
Yeah.
forget. So you've got the touch points, you've got the person coaching someone else.
Mhm.
There's also the opportunity to take our struggles and contribute it to other families.
Right.
Like now that we're in our second year and there's these new families and we're like, oh yeah, we got you. Don't you worry about that.
That one, yeah. Let me tell you how this goes,
Yeah.
like how it can roll out, and it's going to be okay. Like things can change.
Yeah.
Powerfully. Wonderful. And so ironically, we're actually going to step into a moment of coaching Siobhan and Tony.
Yeah.
And I know Siobhan just mentioned that, watching other people be coached is helpful so that you don't feel like you're under the spotlight. And I think the difference now, though, is that you have a lot of fortitude around your parenting
Yeah.
where we can even do this exercise on camera, on a podcast
Publicly.
recording publicly. So walk us through something that, you think would be useful for you right now to get some support with, and let's see what comes of it.
In terms of his being rigid and bossy. So now that he's sort of like gotten the lay of the land, and I think some of it, he's also taking a leadership role at school. We even discovered that he not only has a best friend, but she only speaks Spanish. So he's teaching her English, not necessarily intentionally, but in any case, like he's sort of taking this leadership type of role. But what it translates to sometimes is like, no, you're not doing it right. You have to do it like this. Or what was the one that the video that we were doing with him?
Oh, he wanted us to dance, which was this like Danny Go video of like lava. The floor is lava, so you have to like run in place and then jump off the floor because it's.
Oh, got it.
So
Yeah.
it's the whole game, right?
It's like Just Dance, but for the floor is lava and kids.
And so he wanted us to dance with him. So we got up and we were like, okay, let's dance. And then he didn't do it. We did it. And he was like, okay,
get on
that way. You go that way. Okay, dance. And it was like dance.
Directing a music video or something like that.
And I was like, why don't you move over there? Why don't you dance? Homeboy, I was perfectly fine doing what I was doing before this.
That's so funny.
And sometimes, like if we go back to the conversation about what lane we were driving in, there's times where he's like, I want to go up the hill. No, that's not where we're going. And then he gets really upset.
Yeah.
He's learning to manage his emotions, to regulate his emotions, which is great. But still, like there's the times where it's like, dude, we have to go.
So there are a few things we can bring in here, and this is so helpful. I'm so glad you're bringing up this question because I know many people will benefit from this. Kids, as we know, and we've talked about this a lot in the program, they have limited life experience, and oftentimes the things that upset them now will not upset them later because they'll understand sort of how things work and don't work, right? And so I would say one of his learning edges is understanding what he does and doesn't have influence over or control over, and then being able to accept, having the tools, like you said, emotionally, to accept when he is not actually in the driver's seat. Like I'm thinking of the car metaphor, right? He's literally not holding that steering wheel, and he wants to point and tell and make the steering wheel move, which means Papa. Right? So sometimes having some language around what is a choice and what's not a choice, or what's their work and what's not their work. In kind of Montessori speak, we often say, oh, that's the teacher's work, like the light switch, for example. Oh, the light switch, that's teacher's work to turn it on and off. Would you like to be my helper with my work? And then they can still help you with it, but they're not the boss of it. So making a bit of a distinction around, and you can see which language suits you best or suits the moment best. So your work, my work, or that's the professional's work, because sometimes they want to get into something they're not even supposed to be touching in a setting, right? Like I don't know, maybe pick up a Schaefer in a buffet or something. You're like, oh, it's not our work. Let them do their work, right? Like that's theirs. And then choice and not a choice is also can be a helpful thing, right? Or this is not a choice this time because I know, and you can acknowledge exceptions. And that can be some gray area that kids take some time to understand exists and understand the forces behind it. Because otherwise, what I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed, is that kids will interpret, oh, you made an exception once and now you won't. You're being mean to me. And they do that with their friends too. Like, oh, last time I asked you to play this game, you said yes. Now you're saying no. You're being mean to me. And so they're interpreting it as like, how this person feels about you or what kind of person they are, but they start to nuance that as they mature. So shifting it away from like, you're being mean or you're being nice to, oh, this is not what I care for right now, or this yes and later, right? So those are some ideas that you can roll with.
Okay.
I wonder which of these stands out to you though, like which we think would land with Cass, like the choice, not a choice, daddy's work, mommy's work, Cass's work.
I think the daddy's work, mommy's work, Cass's work will work with him, because I believe that's what they used when he was in Montessori school.
So something familiar is always helpful. So whatever, for our listeners, whatever like might be familiar to them from school, to kind of delineate like when it's their turn or not their turn, when it's something they have influence over or they don't have influence over. Borrowing from that vocabulary can help.
So I can try that with him. I will definitely I mean, I'll definitely put that in
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
I say I mostly because like those kinds of things usually happen with me.
I tend to be less negotiable when it comes to things, and he learns pretty quickly that with
Yeah.
mommy, there are some things we can negotiate, but most things, no.
Well, here's also the thing that he will learn that people have different personalities and temperaments. So
Yeah.
Siobhan you tend to be on task and have a plan
Yeah.
and be in your plan,
Yeah.
right? And then Tony, sometimes you have more flexibility, right? You're kind of like more amenable to suggestions or maybe like just more easygoing in between your tasks. So there's more opportunity to kind of influence you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he will need to learn maybe 2 different tacks with each of you where it's like, ask mommy, but know that you should probably say yes, but later.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll have a plan, and then you'll stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Because you're great at following through, right?
Yeah.
And then with
Mostly.
Papa, well,
Mostly I am
you do a lot. You do a lot more there than most, I would say. Yeah, like above average and follow through. I mean, you were early to this session, for example, looking great. I was like, oh yeah, I think Siobhan made that happen today.
Well, the other thing about it too is that from being in the group, I've been able to soften my rigidity in terms of like, no, they need discipline. They need to know what's going on. We need to be the alpha. If we don't be the alpha, he's going to be the
If you
alpha.
lose control, then they're in control. Yeah,
And
or
then
it's out of control.
He was also on the other far end of the spectrum. So there was a lot of times where we were fighting because it's
Sure.
like, how rigid or flexible should we be?
Mhm.
So both of us, over the time of working together,
Yeah.
have found ways to come towards the middle, which then gives Cass the ability to distinguish that you do different things when you're dealing with different people, which is an important life skill that I never learned.
And there are some things that are true no matter what parent you go to.
Yes.
And I think that's where that overlap has been so powerful.
Yeah.
And that I love helping families find, you know, we just did a session, right, on talking through behavior and like what is in the sort of no zone, like we're like, so we're always going to intervene. There's always going to be a lesson attached to this, or even a consequence. And then what is in the like the go zone, like, yes, like this is what we're cultivating. And then the fun part is everything in between. Like what are the exceptions? And we might wait till he gets older before we raise the expectations. And that's where the flexibility and rigidity conversation needs to happen for anybody working with kids and or, co-parenting. Yeah. So that we know like what our response from the environment is going to be. And in what situations you might offer more flexibility or be more rigid. Right. So like, let's say you're freeway driving and it's a full freeway and it's like lane changing is not a fun thing. You can even explain that exception to him in ways that, and this is my tip, I would say, to take away, in ways that he can recognize the evidence of as much as possible. Because then it doesn't feel arbitrary. And that's when they start to assign that, oh, you're being mean to me, or you're just being difficult or whatever, or stubborn. Instead, it's like, oh, Cass, let's look and see how many cars are on the road. Wow, just right in front of us, I can count at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, so this is a very busy time. And you can even just name it. It's a busy time. And it's not a good time for us to move lanes. So we're going to stick to our lane. Yeah. So like busy time is when we stick to our lane as much as we can and do less lane switching. And then there's like a rationale behind it that he can see evidence of. So that's the other thing.
Not to mention teaching critical thinking.
Yes, like take in the situation, right? Yeah.
Because he's incredibly observant. So I am finding that if we sort of go into his mode, whether it's the playful mode or the observant analytical mode, or he does like to tinker and figure out, well, if I do this, which is 100% me.
And we can pull them into that mode just by making an observation. Like, do you see this? And let's count, right? And kind of pull that forward. So it's less about make you do something I want. It's more about like, oh, let's actually consider the context to this request. And then the adjustment is potentially easier.
Okay.
Okay. Potentially.
I'm more than happy to try. Like I'm more than happy to try.
You always are, Tony. I love it. It's like I'm down. I will give this a whirl and see how it lands. And sometimes it doesn't land well, and other times it'll land better. So maybe try it across many contexts and see where it seems to land well for him.
I mean, I definitely, one of the things I definitely already do is I definitely already explain my reasoning to him. Like if I'm saying something like, hey, we're doing this, here's why.
Great.
And like, so that he understands like, hey, I know this is outside the norm, but this is what's happening because of X, Y, or Z reason. And he may not understand what that reason is. but he like at least will pretend to, and he's like totally on board, like, okay, I got it, we're doing something different, and there's a reason why.
The other thing I want to say you do really well, both of you, is empathize with the fact that he wishes he could have more influence. And you know, I wish you were ready to drive this car and you could show me what you could do on the road, you know? So we're not there yet, honey, you know, right? So it's like empathizing with like, yeah, you know, young kids. I often think of, because I've been around all the young children quite a bit, there are certain personalities in particular, they literally, it feels like they're used to just being able to like control time and space.
Yeah.
And then they end up in this very confining physical form, and they're not sure why things won't just jump when they want them to, or what they think can't just become real right in front of them.
Yeah.
And so they have to sort of get used to the like properties of like physics,
Yeah.
like how things actually work. And
Yeah.
also more importantly, the social dynamics of, you know, there are times and places when you are in control and times and places when you are not, and you need to kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
And every young person, but especially the ones with the strong temperament of like, I am the creator, you know, which is beautiful. We don't want to squash that.
No,
So we want to help them understand how to apply it in a way that, you know, jives with our mutual goals and with safety
Yeah.
that are realistic enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of channel that. Thank you so much for allowing us to take on, you know, a topic and kind of play in the coaching space. Got a few things to try next. As usual, you are always like, so what's my next tip? What's my assignment, coach? Like put me back in with something that I'm gonna be working on.
What's our exercise?
Yeah, exactly. This week or the next 2 weeks. And you know, we take a bold stand at raising our resilience, and just me, like as personally, I have a personal commitment to parents having access to mentorship and having tools and having a community. And I guess I've noticed that the two of you are also very passionate about that. And we'd just love to hear your thoughts about, like, you know, if you had a message for parents out there about, you know, what they deserve in terms of support.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear what
I
your
mean,
thoughts
there's
on that.
the old adage of it takes a community.
Yeah.
And we, as evolutionary beings, we thrive in the world of community. And our society right now, community has been broken down and commoditized.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So where people would have their faith communities or volunteer communities, or like there's still some of those, but there's not really a foundation for that for parenting in many ways.
Yeah.
So being able to, as Tony was addressing, like the kids change over time. So what we're dealing with today, there'll be another thing in 3-4 weeks. So having that
They're gonna
community,
say years.
I wish,
But it is that rapid, especially in early child, like 0 to 10.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, right. And some of it is, I had posted on Facebook about this, you know, we spend a lot of time in our heads, are we a good parent or aren't we a good parent? As opposed to what if I could plan it out, what would I want to be the example to my son of what a healthy, well-adjusted, contributing member of society looks like, and have who I am model for him what's possible in the world. We talk about that it's our job to be the bow and he is the arrow. And the more that we strengthen our ability to pull that bow, the higher likelihood that he's going to reach escape velocity and be the contributing man in a culture right now that doesn't have a whole lot of space for masculinity.
Yeah.
So how do we teach him in a way that he can harness his culture, his community, his lineage, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, break off those shackles and those traits that have been carried from generation to generation, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes just as a function of like we do the best with what we have.
Yeah.
And having a community, having a coach, having mentors, having conversations that a lot of times adults don't talk about these things. You know, hitting isn't something that a lot of people are willing to talk about, and the rules about hitting and the boundaries.
And what I'm hearing you say is like, find your people, find your space to have these conversations. And thank you for creating a space, even on this podcast platform, for this conversation. I know it's going to be meaningful for a lot of folks. Tony, anything else you wanted to add?
Honestly, I look forward to our conversations. Every time we're gonna, like, it gets like, oh, we got Vanessa today. Awesome. I got one, you got 3, you got 6, or how do you want to do it? Yeah.
There are times that we're like, okay, 2 more days and then we have Vanessa.
write it down. We'll talk to Vanessa about it on the Wednesday. So
It's a lot of life.
I hear you. Yeah, that's how I
but
feel about
the other thing
coaching
as
too.
well is like there was a time where I was like, I need a babysitter.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me talk to the group, right? Let me ask the group, right? So it's like a built-in community the way that the communities used to exist, right? And it's like a created one where it's like, okay, and then like, oh, let's have play dates. Let's go, like, we're gonna go cook with some members of the cohort, we're gonna go cook at their house. And so like we're all gonna like sort because our kids really hit it off, and so they're like Cass calls them his two friends.
Oh,
His two new friends, he
good.
calls them. So there's like, there's a certain level of having people that are also like-minded. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where everyone's kind of on the same journey in their own way, but like there's a lot of tools
Mm,
to use. So it's like, okay, that one didn't work. Let's try this one. Or yes, that was perfect. Now let's build on it. Let's make it
yeah.
stronger.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities to like, okay, Vanessa, that worked. Now we need to like go to the next level. Right? It's like,
Figure out what comes next.
like, what's the
Yeah.
next step, right?
Yeah.
Or it went completely sideways. Help.
Yeah,
Where did
like-
my implementation go wrong?
Do we need to throw this tool out and try a completely different one? Because that's always an option too.
I need some A/B testing.
Yeah, like,
Right. Yeah.
but I mean, like the biggest thing is really like having like a lab, really,
Yeah.
like to like
A learning
a
lab.
learning lab. Like there's Siobhan and I have said, and we maintain,
Really do.
we say all the time, we don't know what we're doing. I've never been a parent before. I don't know
It's
what
a
I'm doing.
brand new
It's
thing.
like,
And you haven't
I-
parented this particular child before.
Yeah, it's like I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah.
There are
Even someone like me, I'm an expert. Like someone said, because if I have a round two of children, that they were like, well, of course you would do this with them, and I was like, maybe, and they're like, look at me, and they're like quizzically, like, but isn't this your thing? And I was like, I haven't met the child yet.
Yeah, right?
Like we got to do that first
Yeah.
and see what's going on. So a lot of what we're working towards is like having a lot of options, but then really attuning,
Yeah.
fine tuning,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
finding what actually works not only for the child but also for what you feel like helps you step into authentically the version of parent that you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which also creates space for the child
Right.
to have a say in what kind of child they want to be.
That's right.
That autonomy it breaks my brain a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Because it's like he is a little person. He has his own thoughts and desires and concepts, and
yeah.
he
His own
should have a
his own
say.
opinions, his own sense of
Yeah.
humor, his own all that jazz. Yeah.
And they do participate in developing themselves, and
Oh,
that's what
yeah.
you've tapped into so
Mhm.
powerfully. I just want to applaud the both of you and thank you again for being so generous with your time, with your spirits, with your hearts, with your
Certainly.
words, your thoughts.
Certainly.
Yeah, I know so many people will benefit from this.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to contribute, because
For
that's
sure.
one of the things that's really life-giving for us is we've been through this. We know you can get to the other side. Let me show you.
As we wrap up, remember, there's no one-size-fits-all way to parent. Keep nurturing those strong family bonds and watch resilience bloom in your community. You've got this. And if you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also hop over to thecalmempoweredparent.com for current events and to grab your copy of the Calm Parent Strategy Guide. You can even learn how to bring our free and low-cost workshops to your school or community. Your support means the world to us and helps us empower more parents and children. Let's do this together.